views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Voices of Women is a talk radio show that gives voice to the personal stories of women. It will inspire women and enlighten men to follow their dreams and create positive changes in their lives. Whether the audience listens to best-selling authors or a layperson like themselves, they'll realize there are others with similar experiences and feelings to their own. This show will give women tools they can use every day, which will empower them to step out of their boxes and create the changes they desire in their life. Kris inspires women to find their voices, speak up, and become leaders of their own life. Everyone has their gifts to share with the world, and it's time for women to work together to bring honor and respect to the feminine voice, which is within all people, men and women. Topics include personal growth, spirituality, creativity, leadership, and divine feminine. Now here's your host, Kris Steinnes.
Well, welcome to Voices of Women. So glad for people to be joining me today. I'm very excited, my guest. But first, I want to share about Women of Wisdom. It is Give Big Day in Seattle, May 10th, where people donate to their favorite causes, and I'm hoping Women of Wisdom is one of your causes that you'd like to support. You don't have to live in Seattle to donate either. We're very excited. We have a matching donation of $3,000, so your dollars will be doubled. And when you give to Women of Wisdom, you continue our dream of supporting women on their path to empowerment, embracing their gifts and divine feminine within. We're kind of at a crossroads in our development because I am retiring, and this Give Big Drive will help us continue our programs. We're actually in a transformation process and having lots of meetings to discover what's in store for Women of Wisdom in the future. So you can just go to givebigseattle.org and search for Women of Wisdom. So I'm gone against my usual format because of my show being called Voices of Women. I'm having a male guest today, Neale Donald Walsch, and I'm sure you all know him from his Conversations with God series. He's known as a modern-day spiritual messenger and has authored 9 books in the Conversations with God series, sold over 10 million copies in 37 languages. He's one of the major authors in the New Spirituality movement, has written 29 books, and there's 8 books that have been on the New York Times bestseller list. His life and work have helped to create and sustain a worldwide spiritual renaissance, and he travels globally to bring the uplifting message of the Conversation with God books to people everywhere. Now we're going to be talking about his newest book. It's the 4th book of the Conversations with God. It's just come out. It's Awaken the Species. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Neale.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for that very kind introduction.
Yes, well, I always start with people telling this story, and I'm sure you have told yours many times, but this all began when you wrote an angry letter to God on a yellow legal pad. Was that 25 years ago?
Yes, somewhere in there. It was around 23 or 24 years ago. I've lost track of the time, frankly, but that's exactly what happened. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was very, very angry with life, the universe, God, call it what you will, or all of the above. And because, I was 50 years old, and nothing in my life was working. Nothing was turning out the way I thought that it would. And so I just wrote this angry letter out of the blue on a yellow legal pad that I found lying on the coffee table in the middle of the night. What does it take to make life work? And what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? And finally, somebody tell me the rules. I'll play. I promise I'll play. Just give me the rule book. So that's where my mind was at on that night 23 years ago. And then I heard a voice over my right shoulder, an actual physical voice in the room. And it said, Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions, or are you just venting? And I turned around. Of course, there was no one there, and I thought, oh, great, not only am I furious with God, I'm now going out of my mind. But in the very next moment, I began to feel myself overcome, and I hate to be so trite and predictable about this, but truly overcome with a sense of inner peace and serenity that actually kind of brought tears to my eyes. I was becoming tearful because I had never felt quite that much bliss in one moment. And I thought, gosh, wow, this is wonderful. And so I just kind of mused to myself, if you've got answers, I'd sure as heck like to know what they are. And with that, I was receiving a download. It felt like somebody had just downloaded tons and tons and tons of words that I began scribbling on the yellow legal pad just to make sure I captured all that was coming to me in my mind. This now began to be something I was experiencing interiorly. It no longer felt like an exterior voice, but really like a voiceless voice, almost like the voice of my own thoughts. But there I was, writing like crazy, trying to capture everything that I was receiving. And as you might imagine, some of the information that I was receiving brought up other questions. So I couldn't stop myself. I just found myself asking, wait a minute, hold it just a minute. How can that be? Or what about this? Or explain that. And I got answers to those questions. And before I knew it, I was involved in a on paper, or if you please, a handwritten dialogue with God. Question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. This went on for probably 3 or 4 hours. It was now 7:30 or 8:30 in the morning. And I had many, many, many pages, in fact, a couple of tablets of yellow legal pads filled with this kind of dialogue. And that continued for weeks after that. I was awakened virtually every night between 4:15 and 4:30 in the morning, and found myself engaged in that process until it was really, how would I put it, written out. By the way, may I please add that I never imagined that I was writing a book. It never occurred to me that anyone would see this.
Yes, that's the way it happens, isn't it?
Yeah,
yes. Well, it's interesting.
I was simply going to add that as far as I was concerned, I was simply journaling, just writing in my private journal. But someone asked me a few years ago, well, then why did it become a book if you were just private journaling? How did it get to be a book? And there's kind of an interesting story behind that, because in the journal, it said, this will one day become a book. And I thought to myself, aha, now I got you. That's measurable. Everything else that I was receiving was conceptual or theoretical in nature, but here was an absolute statement of fact, a measurable outcome. Either it would be a book or it wouldn't. And I understood that nobody's going to publish a book by an unpublished author, somebody that no one ever heard of, who claims to be talking to God. The chances of that were 1 in a gazillion. But in fact, a publisher on the East Coast did receive the manuscript, did agree to publish the book. It went on to sell millions of copies and be translated into 37 languages.
Yes, it's quite a story. And I'm thinking, because it's called Conversations with God, and a lot of people, they consider themselves channels. Did you ever feel like you were channeling it? Because, that kind of that voice that comes, that, it's not yours, but, at first it was a voice, and then it was an internal. It's kind of hard to describe, I imagine.
The answer is no. I've rejected the notion that I'm channeling God, at least not according to the popular notion of the word channeling. In popular parlance, that word means that somehow your whole being is taken over by another entity, and who you are kind of like disappears and is kind of standing on the sidelines. But that's not anywhere near what occurred. What I call it is inspired writing. What inspired Mozart to produce the music he produced? What inspired Michelangelo to produce the beautiful, awesome, breathtaking ceiling of the Sistine Chapel? From whence cometh any level of creation, including the inspired writings of other people as well. So I think it was really inspired writing, and I think that it came from the same source of creation from which other people draw in their life. Mozart, Michelangelo, or any of the great writers. Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, where did that come from in 3 days' time? So there you have it, and so that's what I think happened here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know you talk about it in this book too, but I'd love for you to share if you ever have doubts that it's actually God you are dialoguing with.
Well, yeah, I've been asked that question many times, and Matt Lauer asked me that exact question on the Today Show a few years ago, and I said to Matt what I've said to everybody else who's asked me that question. Of course I have doubts. The day I stop doubting is the day I become dangerous, and I have no intention of becoming dangerous. But the point that was made in the book, that's made in every one of the books that have followed, by the way, in all of the books, the same point is made. God is talking to everyone all the time. This is not about Neale Donald Walsch being some kind of an exceptional person. or an individual person with an individual experience. Everybody is having the same experience. We're simply calling it something else. We call it women's intuition, a moment of inspiration, an epiphany, a brilliant idea, whatever we want to call it, that we can avoid being marginalized because we wouldn't dare call it, a conversation directly with God. The wonderful comedian, I forgot her name, but anyway, she said when I say that I talk to God all the time, people call me devout. When I say that God talks to me all the time, they call me crazy.
Yes. Well, it's fascinating, and I love it. That it was this whole questioning. I mean, when it first happened, it just brings up more questions. And in each book, it's always one question leads to another question, and you're this person to do this because you have that questioning mind. And you thought that you finished your last book 10 years ago. Why do you think God knocked on your door for this fourth book, this new conversation you just had?
Well, I think it's because this is the perfect time for our advancement, and the dialogue that I just finished writing actually makes that statement. This what's going on right now in the world, this is creating the perfect time for our advancement, in the sense that the conditions are now being created in all the countries of the world for us to take a really close, hard look at the largest question in front of all of us, individually and collectively. The individual question and the collective question: is this who I am? Is this who I really choose to be? Is this the highest expression I can imagine of my humanity and of my personhood? And what, for that matter, does any of this have to do with my real reason for being on the earth? And so I think that the humanity, every so often, it happens to us every 200 or 300 years. The last time was during the Renaissance, about 300 or 400 years ago, where we take a look at what's going on around us and we say, wait a minute, just a second. Is this how we really want it to be? During the Renaissance, everything that was a 300-year period of time, but during that 300 years, everything changed. We changed the way we did economy, commerce, business, what we called politics in those days. We changed our religious approach, art, culture, music, everything changed within that period of time. These days, we're going through what Marianne Williamson calls the second Renaissance. Only it won't take 300 years. It'll take about 30 years, about 1/10 the time, because of the ubiquitous nature of our communication around the world.
Yes, it's fascinating, and you're right, it is the right time. We're going to take a quick break now. We're going to come back and talk more about Conversations with God and Neale Donald Walsch.
How would you like increased health and vitality? How would you like to avoid the onset of disease as well as slow the aging process? This is all possible through a simple, safe, and natural process. Every day we are either moving toward wellness or away from wellness.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. I'd like to be your partner in achieving optimal health. Contact me now at maryjanemack.com or call 425-392-0659. Visit maryjanemack.com.
When your body is awakened, your spirit comes alive. Dana Canetto is a transformational guide, embodiment coach, and spiritual mentor assisting women in realigning with their truth and embodying who they are by connecting to the wisdom of their body. Tune in every month on Transformation Talk Radio and the Dr. Pat Show Network for Body Divinity Radio with Dana Canetto. For more information on Dana and her services, visit danacanetto.com. That's DANACANNETO.com.
What is a brilliant culture, and how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you align your culture with your business strategy for exceptional results. Looking for a culture that drives organizational excellence? Listen to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the second and fourth Friday of each month at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit culturalbrilliance.com.
Kris Steinnes is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voices-of-women-today.com. That's voices-of-women-today.com.
Tune in to the hit show Mouthing Off with Chef Rossi. Chef Rossi mouths off about different subjects in pursuit of breaking down walls and opening up your minds. She and Dr. Pat banter back and forth, taking from the headlines of the day on subjects that reach beyond what goes on in the world into your hearts. And go to theragingskillet.com to find out more and let Chef Rossi know what's on your mind. Treat the Body and Expand the Soul on June 1st with Lynn Brown. Imagine 3 days in a hand-built log home nestled in the Cascade Mountain. Activate the collaboration between the body and spirit and allow the accelerated connection as one of the most powerful ways to light up your cells, honor the body's needs in this all-inclusive event. Visit lynnmbrown.com or call 206-931-7356.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I have Neale Donald Walsch with us today. We're talking about Conversation with God, Awaken the Species. So I love that title, Awaken the Species, and you were just talking about how it's really time now, and so for our advancement. And now in the book, it talks about this being the third invitation. Let's talk about this. What is this invitation?
Well, I think that God is inviting all of us, myself and everyone who is attracted to reading that book, to, in fact, awaken the species. And it's the third invitation because in the first books in the series, I was offered, along with everyone who read those books, the first two invitations. The first invitation that was received from God in book one was to change the world's mind about God. A major invitation. Change the world's mind about God. Invitation number two, give people back to themselves. That is, allow them to return and to know who they are, to know what their true identity actually is, and return to that. But this was the third invitation, now almost 18 years later, and the invitation is to awaken the species in order to take advantage of the fact that this is, in fact, the perfect time for our advancement. It's a critical time, I think, in the forward movement of humanity.
Yes, and I love it that God states the fastest way to awaken the self, because we're talking about awakening the self, is to awaken another. And so, to me, that speaks to taking responsibility of who we are, how we live, how we share who we are, and it also has another message to me of to stop hiding, and that because to awaken others, we've got to be visible and showing who we are. Correct?
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's exactly what the book says, that the book invites human beings to self-select, that is, to choose themselves, to be among those who commit to moving forward their own individual and personal evolution by embracing and demonstrating certain behaviors that, once exhibited by them, serve to awaken others, in fact, to awaken the species, to who and what human beings really are, and then to show those other people that these realities about who we really are may be made manifest in our experience. In other words, to be exemplars, to be examples, to show, hey, you know what? It is possible to live in certain ways. And if you watch very carefully what I'm doing in the world, you'll see that I've adopted some of those ways in my own daily behaviors. And so that's the invitation from God in Book 4, Awaken the Species, to embrace certain behaviors and make them part of our daily life that cause other people to step back a few feet and say, wow, how did you get to be like that? And what sponsors that kind of activity and that kind of decision and those kinds of choices that you're making in your life? I want to be more like you is basically what we are hoping that people will say, even as has been said to all of the world's wonderful spiritual masters and teachers through the centuries. But the day of the individual guru, the day of the individual master is over. It's now time for the collective to step forward. That is a large number of individuals, not several hundred or several thousand, not even several million, but perhaps several billion, to step forward now and to say, okay, we've heard the message, we've heard the insights, we've been given the gifts of awareness. Let's now step forward into the living of those gifts, into the sharing of those gifts, into the demonstrating of those gifts. And let's be those gifts. As Gandhi said, he put it perfectly, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Yes, and so I'm curious for yourself, because you received this conversation last August, so 9 months ago? I'm not quite. What has changed in your life since then?
Well, my level of determination and commitment, and certain of my behaviors that I was, kind of like stepping into on and off sporadically, have become a little more consistent in my life. Because the book gave me, of course I asked in the book, what is it like to be an awakened species? I mean, what's the difference between an awakened species and human beings who are living in an unawakened state, such as myself? And God said, well, I can give you a list if you'd like me to. And I said, please, if you wouldn't mind. And so I was, in fact, given a list of 16 specific behaviors that mark the differences between an awakened species and humans in an unawakened state. So what's changed in my life is that I've embraced at least a few of those behaviors in my life now more consistently. I'm not going to say that I never did those things, but now I do them much more of the time, and a few of them I'm actually doing them always. And so that's what's changed in my life, and I think if those kinds of changes are made in the lives of a lot of people, we're going to see a ripple in the water effect that's going to change the way human beings experience themselves and express themselves across the earth. So that list of 16 behavioral differences is fascinating. It makes the spine of the book, if you please, a major part of the interior of the book.
Yes, and also one of the things about this that God talks about is, a lot of us are aware, but he talks about I don't want to say he, she. I'm into, wanting to honoring all aspects of God, that we're aware, but we're not aware we're aware. In other words, we're not living like we're really aware. And that's sort of an interesting concept to get your head around,
It's exactly interesting. It is fascinating. We are awake. Because I said to God, how can I awaken the species when I'm not even awake? Because I don't really experience myself, and I certainly wouldn't represent myself as a spiritual master who's fully awakened. But God said to me in the book, you know what, Neale, you and all the other people who are being drawn to this material, the very fact that you're being drawn to the material suggests that you are awake. I said, but I don't experience being awake. God said, no, you're awake, but you don't know it. Then I said to God, well, how is that possible? How can I be awake and not know it? God said, well, let me give you a simple example from real life. Have you ever heard a bump in the night and thought it was part of your dream? And then suddenly sat upright in bed and went, oh, my gosh, wait a minute. I wasn't dreaming. That actually happened. The cat downstairs must have knocked over a vase or something. Something's going on because I heard that sound in real life. And you suddenly realize that you were not sleeping. You were actually awake when you heard that sound in the middle of the night. And God said, have you ever had an experience like that? I said, of course. I've had many experiences exactly like that. God said, there you are. There you are. It's possible to be awake and not to know it until you do. But once you do know it, then what do you choose to do about it? See, once you know, as Maya Angelou, as wonderful Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. But what does that look like? Humanity is looking for, just some ideas, some thoughts about that. And the book Awaken the Species gives us a list of 16 ways that we can actually demonstrate ourselves as an awakened species.
Can you give us an example of one of these characteristics? I know he's talking about God's talking about highly evolved beings. How are they different than humans?
Well, I can give you two or three in a short time here. An awakened species sees the unity of all of life and lives into it. Humans in an unawakened state often deny it or ignore it. An awakened species tells the truth, always. Not once in a while, not even most of the time, but always. Humans in an unawakened state too often fib. Sometimes they lie outright, and often, sadly, even to themselves. An awakened species says one thing and actually will do what it says. Humans in an unawakened state often say one thing and do another. And here's my favorite. An awakened species, having seen and acknowledged what is so, will always do what works. Humans in an unawakened state often do the opposite. That is, they see what is so, and they act as if they don't know what is so, and they do just the opposite of what works. And God even gave me a series of examples of that, the most striking of which is, for instance, if your objective is to raise children free of violence and rage, placing them directly in front of vivid depictions of violence and rage during their most impressionable years probably is not going to work. In fact, this has already been demonstrated. Still, we put them in front of television programs, movies. We actually take them to movies where there's violence all over the screen. We actually buy them toys to play with in the backyard, machine guns, plastic machine guns that sound every bit like the real thing, and we let them watch video games that are more violent than anything you could ever imagine. And then when they turn out to be violent in the way they're acting out, we turn to each other as parents and say, gosh, where did they ever get such an idea? I don't understand. If your objective is to live a life of peace and joy and love, violence does not work. I mean, it's obvious. Yet we continue to use violence as a means of trying to end violence, which is craziness. If your objective is to live a life of good health and great longevity, consuming dead flesh daily, smoking known carcinogens continuously, and drinking gallons of nerve-deadening, brain-frying liquids does not work. We already know it doesn't work, but we do it anyway. It's craziness. We see what works and we do the opposite. And finally, if your objective is to discover and cultivate a relationship with a living deity so that religion can make a difference in the affairs of humans, then teaching of a God of righteousness, punishment, and terrible retribution does not work. In fact, it teaches humanity to use religion as a killing device, as a tool, as a belief system that gives us righteousness and the right to, we think, to kill others who don't agree with us. These are obvious things. They're so obvious to an awakened species, which sees and acknowledges what does work and does not do the opposite. That's just 4 of the 16 items on the list of things that an awakened species would never do. I'll give you one more real fast one. An awakened species would never poison itself. Humans in an unawakened state often do so. We poison ourselves 3 or 4 or 5, 6 times a day in a wide variety of ways, even knowing ahead of time that we're doing it. What's up with us? So the question becomes,
good question.
Is there something we don't know? I mean, fully understand, the understanding of which would change everything? And the answer to that question becomes profoundly yes, of course. And, Pema Chodron, the wonderful, wonderful Buddhist nun, put it simply in one single sentence recently. She said, we are a blink of an eye away from fully awakening. All we have to do is just have one more example of what an unawakened species looks like, and we're going to say, okay, enough, just enough. Take away our health care. Take away our environmental protections. Do what you think you need to do in order to be the next wonderful world leader, whoever you think you are, here or in Syria or in France or anywhere in England. Go ahead. I mean, but at one point, humanity is going to stand up and say, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah, and that's happening. We're seeing that, and because people are waking up, we have to. We're at this time that we look at the Women's March and people are saying no more, and it's a big wake up call. So your book's very timely for that too. But we have to take another break, so we're going to be back shortly, and we'll talk more with Neale Donald Walsch about the conversations with God.
Tune in to The Truth is Funny with Colette Steffen each Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This hit show will have you thinking outside the box and riding the wave of infinite potential. Join Colette on the Higher Self Network, inspiring listeners to shine their brilliance and ensure success while roaring with laughter as they recognize the humor of the giant cosmic joke. Visit thetruthисfunny.com.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
Hey, did you know why they call the foundation the foundation? It's called the foundation because it completely eliminates your foundation for what you thought your reality was and creates a whole new space where you can have an entirely new reality that is foundationless. So from my point of view, they should call it the unfoundation. or the foundationlessness. Either way, there's a big new global rewrite happening again because these guys cannot stop changing. There should be like a Change Anonymous that Gary and Dane go to. And it's happening April 28th to May 1st. You can find out about it at accessconsciousness.com/global foundation. It's happening in Paris. Go to Paris or do it online or find a pod near you. These are all the options you have. And what else is possible?
Is traditional medicine not working for you? Do you still feel as if your health isn't 100%? Here at the Holistic Medical Center, Dr. Nushin Darvish and the qualified staff look through the dimensions of wellness and start a healing plan prioritized to your needs. Our physicians assess the whole you until complete health is achieved. Get the help you need by visiting drdarvish.com or call 425-451-0404.
Get ready to experience Truth Talk Radio with host Deb Acker. Tune in to Truth Talk Radio each Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com to illuminate the truth in your daily life as you experience life, love, and abundance from a whole new perspective. This hit show will leave you feeling lighter and bring you into a place of infinite possibilities every day in every way. Visit TruthTalkRadioshow.com for upcoming transformative topics and guests.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I'm Kris Steinnes, and I'm talking with Neale Donald Walsch, author of the book Conversation with God. It's book 4, Awaken the Species. Neale, please share your website and what people can find there. I know you have several different ways that people can connect with each other and learn more about how to integrate these tools.
Yes, thank you. The website is easy to remember. If you can think of the name of the book, Conversations with God, then the website is cwgconnect.com, cwgconnect.com. And you're right, there people will find it's kind of like the Facebook of the CWG community, this Facebook of the spirituality community on the internet. People will find a global community of people who are talking back and forth with each other and sharing their own progress and their own struggles and their own movement through this process. They'll find, however, many other resources as well, videos, audios, articles that have been written about it and about the conversations with God and how to apply the message in their daily life, plus a special column called Ask Neale that I am spending about 3 or 4 hours a day on these days, responding to people's questions about the interpretation and the meaning of the messages of Conversations with God of the CWG books and how to apply them as a practical matter in everyday life. So, yeah, it's a very vibrant and active place for people who want to move forward in their own evolutionary process to be. And again, the address is cwgconnect.com. Thank you for asking.
Great. Yes, and it's so needed to get that support and have a place to go to ask the questions and find tools. And one of the things I liked about the book, God is even telling you to be open and honest about your mistakes with others. It's not about waiting to awaken others after you become a perfectly highly awakened being. Because it would be waiting forever, right? I mean, it's okay to have our mistakes, and it's good to share our mistakes with other people, because they learn from that.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, that's one of the first. That is the first of the 7 tools of integration, how to integrate those behaviors I mentioned earlier into our daily lives. The book contains a list of those 7 tools. And that happens to be, you chanced upon it, the very first of those tools of integration. The choice to share openly both our struggles and our progress is empowering to others. It's actually emancipating. It's unshackling to others in an amazing way, because others are then finding within themselves the will to express the divinity that is theirs and that is ours. And in liberating others, we find our own desire liberated as well and our ability to move to the next level. So yes, sharing our experience truthfully, honestly, and authentically is a powerful tool with which to integrate the behaviors of highly evolved species. Another powerful tool is to create a reason for life itself. The question must be asked, why? Well, why are we doing this? Why are we living the life that we are living, and why are these things happening to us? And we have to answer that question, I think. Our path in life is not without purpose in the heavens. For every soul which would grow to know in its experience what it has always understood in its awareness serves not only its own agenda, but the superconscious will of the collective. So we have to give ourselves a reason. We have to understand, why is this happening? What's going on here? And I'm happy to say that the Conversations with God books in total, and especially this latest one, Book 4, Awaken the Species, in fact, addresses that question in depth. Why are things going on the way they are right now? What's happening in the world? There's a lot of apprehension in the world right now, and a lot of people who are asking that question. What's happening here? Why is everything seeming to be falling apart? And so once we find that reason, we go, I get it. Then when we understand the reason, we become part of the reason that the changes will occur. Another wonderful tool of integration, I don't want to go through a whole list here, but the last one I would mention here in our time together is gratitude. This is a powerful, powerful tool. In fact, I think it's the most powerful tool we could be given. Gratitude can be a selected energy, not just an automatic response. And I have discovered in my life that when someone actively chooses to be grateful for everything that's presenting itself, and I do mean everything, it sets up an energy that washes over and impacts the energy of whatever is now arising. And this can transmogrify the entire experience, the presentation itself, to say nothing of changing one's entire life. So what I've learned in my life is that by moving into gratitude for whatever is occurring, in the moment that it's occurring, to say thank you, God, for bringing this to me as an opportunity for me to announce and declare, express and fulfill, become and experience who I really am. Thank you, God, for this wonderful opportunity. Our shift of internal energy actually impacts the exterior experience such that it often transforms it. And that's a powerful, powerful way to use metaphysics. So I just want to share some of those tools. There's a whole list of them in the book. I don't want to just read the book to you, but I can tell you that the book is highly, highly powerful in terms of the information it presents. It's only been out about a month, but even in that month of time, people who've read it are saying, wow, needed to hear this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that I love it that you persisted in asking God for the tools to help us integrate. That's your questioning mind, really getting down to what does this take for us to do? And so you've given us a couple of these, and also there's some behaviors of if we were to begin acting like we are aware, we're awakened. One of them is don't entertain negative thoughts, and I think that's so important because I know in myself how many times during the day has a negative thought been running through my mind, and what God is saying is to let it run out, not to hang on to it. And I've heard this before too from other places lately, is because we can really focus on the negative things happening in our lives, and then we're the victim or whatever. But God's saying, don't entertain them. It's like just let them out the back door, however you want to,
exactly.
to realize they're not important. They're not.
Let them just flow right. Don't give it a second thought, as God said to me. It may be your first thought, but don't give it a second thought. And you're right. That's one of a number of ways. I ask God, of course, in the dialogue, how can I know when I'm awake? I mean, just don't give me any broad-based, philosophical conversation. Just give me some actual indications. How would I know specifically when I'm acting like a person who's awake? And the first thing that she said is, don't entertain a second thought, a negative thought in your mind for more than a second. And if a negative thought did happen to slip in, get it out of your mind immediately. Just change your mind about that. She also said that you'll know you're awake because you would love yourself fully just as you are, and you would love everyone else fully just as they are. Then you would love life fully just as it is, needing nothing to change, and seeing everything as simply something that you are moving through so that you can know about and create a contextual field, providing you with an opportunity to demonstrate who you really are, which is why we're here. Why we're here on the earth is to know and demonstrate our true identity. God also said that another way you'll know that you're awake, this is a powerful one, by the way, I've never thought about it in this way, you would forgive no one, and you would forgive nothing ever again. That you would understand that understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. You would be clear that holding an idea that there is a need for forgiveness means holding an idea that injury has occurred. And as a human who is awake, You would be aware that injury is not possible in the experience of divinity, which is who you are. You would therefore replace forgiveness with understanding in your interactions with others. This would naturally lead to compassion for others as you experience the full realization of the pain, anger, or sadness that they must have felt at such a high level to cause them to abandon their own true nature and behave as they did. And we look at every single master every single person we've recognized as a master throughout human history, and they have done exactly that. I asked God, I'm not sure I'm up to that. God said, of course you are. You've already demonstrated it, but you demonstrated it in a limited way. For instance, God said, supposing you had a 3-year-old grandchild at her birthday party, and she knocks over the milk on the entire table. Everybody's glass of milk is knocked over in her urgency to get to that chocolate cake. She just loves that chocolate cake, and she reached for it and knocked everything over. And you don't look at the child. You do not look at your 3-year-old grandchild and say, I forgive you. It's okay, honey, I forgive you. Forgiveness is not a part of the equation. In fact, not only do you not forgive her and tell her that she's forgiven, you actually comfort her and tell her that everything is okay. It's all right. And we might even say the actual words, sweetie, it's okay. I understand. I understand. Because we do understand how a 3-year-old could do such a thing. Well, you know what? When we understand how anybody, an adult, who's acting like a 3-year-old, could do what they do, when we understand the urgency behind what caused them to act in the way they did, then we show the kind of compassion, awareness, understanding, compassion, and insight that a spiritual master begins to demonstrate in daily life. So therefore, we don't forgive anyone anything any more than God forgives us for anything. God says, I will never forgive you for anything because I understand perfectly well how you could have done the things you did. Nobody does anything inappropriate, given their model of the world in any given moment. What we need to do is simply change our model of the world, or to repeat what I said earlier from Maya Angelou, that wonderful quotation, when we know better, we do better.
Yeah, and I imagine some people have trouble with this because you think of someone who's murdered somebody or something, that a horrible thing like that. How they can get through.
What do we think that God does to the murderer? What do we think that God says to the murderer? I wonder what we think. The Pope. This is a wonderful example. A couple of years ago, not Pope Francis, but the preceding Pope. I think it was Pope Paul II. I believe he was almost murdered. He was shot in the stomach by somebody at one of his parades, and he stepped forward while he was going by in the car and shot him in the stomach. He almost died. He was, of course, rushed to the hospital, and they saved his life. But then he went to of course, they captured the guy. They threw him in jail, for life and beyond. But what the Pope did was he went to the man's cell, and he gave him his papal blessing. And he said, I understand. I understand how the views that you hold could cause you to do what you did. I don't agree with them. I don't approve of them. I don't condone them, but I understand, given how you were raised, the background that you came of age in, and what you believe to be true. I totally understand what could cause you, who I'm sure is considered by some of your people, friend, a wonderful and loving person, but I understand how you could do this terribly unloving thing. So, it was a huge demonstration, and he's not the first person to have given us that kind of a demonstration. All the world's great spiritual leaders
it takes a very courageous person. Well, we have to take another break. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have to take another commercial break, and we'll come back and talk more with Neale Donald Walsch.
Treat the Body and Expand the Soul on June 1st with Lynn Brown. In this all-inclusive retreat, you'll treat your body with breakout sessions in the various elements of nature. Enjoy fireside chats while harnessing the healing energy of fire. Allow more light with more ease and activate that connection between the body and spirit. Call 206-931-7356 or visit lynnmbrown.com.
Brand consultant Jen Morgan is here with Radically Distinct Radio to help you take control of your future and maximize your brand's power to produce results. Whether you're an individual trying to reinvent yourself and launch a new venture, or you're an executive trying to reposition your company to modernize your sales and marketing programs, Jen Morgan and the RAD method empower you to play to your strengths and show up in the world as your most powerful brand. To learn more, go to jenmorgan.com. That's Jen with 2 N's, Morgan.com, or call 206-972-5366.
Discover the healing medicine from the giant monkey tree frog Cambo. Cambo practitioner Ginny Rutherford and professional psychic Todd Rolson have come together for lively discussions of alternative healing medicines from the Amazon. Ginny and Todd bring you Cambo Talk Radio. Tune in each Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific to hear from guests all over the world with real life stories and the medicinal benefits of Cambo. For more information, visit cambokiss.com. Calling all moms, it's time to awaken your vibrant, intuitive, loving self in every area of your life. Join host Debbie Pokornik as she shares thoughts, stories, and tools to help you stand in your power. Listen to Vibrant, Powerful Moms helping everyday women create extraordinary lives. Mondays at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. For more information about Debbie, visit empoweringenergy.com. That's empowering with letters NRG.com.
Tune in to The Jen Royster Show, intuitive guidance to inspire your life, each Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This amazing show is an inspirational hour that will take you on an epic metaphysical journey to discover the spiritual approach to life's greatest challenges. Dr. Jen is an internationally known intuitive counselor, spiritual teacher, and energy healer. Call in for intuitive readings and visit JenRoyster.com for more information.
Wow. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. This is Talk Radio to Thrive By. I'm telling you, I got to pinch myself some days because when each of us gets called to do something that we so not thought was in our wheelhouse to do for a purpose that's so much greater than us, we get to show up and shine.
If you would like to show up and shine on the Dr. Pat Show as a co-host or sponsor, send us an email to inspire@thedrpatshow.com.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I'm Kris Steinnes, and I'm talking with the author of Conversation with God, Neale Donald Walsch. And so, Neale, we were just talking about forgiveness and all that, and one of the things we were talking at the break is this is not a new thought. You know, there's that whole connotation of New Age religion and New Thought community, and it kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. And what you're saying is this isn't anything new.
No. A lot of people say, oh, this is just New Age gobbledygook. But actually, excuse me, we had many spiritual teachers, one of whom I'm particularly fond of, who said to us several thousand years ago the same exact thing. He put it more eloquently. He said, bless your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you. And raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. We've been receiving messages like this from all the great spiritual masters of all the great spiritual traditions for a long, long, long time. The question is not to whom is God talking. The question is who's listening. So when I speak like this in front of audiences, they say, New Age, forgive everybody. But excuse me, a man named Jesus gave us that instruction several thousand years ago. Is anybody listening? And when I bring that up, they go, oh, well, that was a different story. He's a different kind of person. Really? He was inviting us to be like him. I am the way, he said, and the life. Follow me. Not become one of my followers. See, a spiritual leader is not one who has the most followers. A spiritual leader is the one who says, I'll go first. So what the spiritual leader is inviting us to do now is to become spiritual leaders ourselves and to stand at the front of the line and to say, I'll go first. Bless your enemies and pray for those who persecute you and be a light unto the darkness and curse it not. A simple shift like that could change the world overnight if enough people embraced it. But I don't have a whole lot of patience with people saying, New Age author, New Age gobbledygook. Excuse me. Look at the basis of virtually every human religion on the face of the earth, and you will find the same message.
Yes, and I love it. I mean, one of the things that we have problems with is stopping to listen because our lives are so busy. And we're busy doing. And that's one of the things in the book God talks about is about being, who are we being?
Yeah.
And just to stop and pay attention to that. Who are you? Who are you to be and to listen? There's a magic question that I place before my own mind before I'm ready to start doing anything. Because you're right. We wind up, by the way, I'm one of those. I'm not indicting anybody. I've behaved the same way for more than 50 or 60 years, doing this and doing that, doing this and doing that, doing this and doing that. And all I wind up with at the end of the day is a great big pile of doo-doo. But we are not human doings. We are human beings. And we have been placed here to be who we really are and to give ourselves permission to experience and step right into that. That's what we're up to here on the planet. So we don't have to spend our lives doing all this immaterial stuff anymore. We can just decide. We can ask ourselves a magic question. There's a question that I ask myself before I do anything. Go to dinner, catch a movie, turn on television, read a book, or even, for that matter, put on a particular piece of clothing or listen to a particular piece of music. Here's the magic question. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And what aspect of divinity is the present circumstance inviting me to demonstrate? Those two questions can change your life virtually overnight. And what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? Before I got on this interview, and thank you, by the way, for the invitation, very generous of you, and before I picked up the phone and got on the interview, I asked myself the question, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And when the answer comes back, everything, I'm fully present with you. Yes, and that's a wonderful gift. It's a gift that all of us can give to ourselves. Yeah, and I invite people to ask themselves that question before they do anything. I sometimes walk out of movie theaters. I may go in thinking, well, it sounds like a good movie, and it gets to be too violent or just way, way, way off the mark. And I'll sit there after 12 or 15 minutes, and I'll say to myself, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? What in the world am I doing here? And I get up, turn to my wife, and say, you know what? You can watch it if you want to. I'm out of here. And she looks at me and says, I was just waiting for you to leave. I didn't want to leave without you. Let's get out of here. Mm-hmm. What are we doing here? Mm-hmm. And that's true of many things. What are we doing here at this cocktail party? What are we doing here at this? Why are we doing what we're doing? And what does it have to do with our real reason for being on the earth? There are 4 fundamental questions in life that people have gone through their entire lives and never asked. Many people. Who am I? Where am I? Why am I where I am? And what do I intend to do about that? All of this, of course, is included in Conversations with God, Book 4, Awaken the Species. If people really want to know that they're really awake, they can self-select to be one of those who chooses to act that way. And we have a website that they can go to as well. They can just go to ihaveselfselected.com. ihaveselfselected.com. And there they can reclaim their true and real identity. That's fabulous. So one last sentence or two, your vision for humanity. My vision for humanity is that everyone in the human race would understand that life is not about us. Life is not about you. Life is not about me. Life is about everyone whose life I touch and the way in which I touch it. So my vision for humanity is that we would all suddenly become awakened to the fact that we are here as spiritual entities. We are spiritual beings having a body. We are not our body. We are not our mind. And the agenda of this planet has little to do with the agenda of the soul. When the two become one, life will change around the world, virtually overnight. And we're all wanting that. I was going to say waiting. We can't wait any longer. And that's what this book is about. And I love what you said about a leader to step forward and to ask yourself, am I that leader to step forward to take the first step? Because chances are, if one person takes a step, others will join you because they've been waiting for somebody to take that first step.
That's exactly right. That is profoundly correct. We're all sitting on the parade waiting for someone to show us the way home, if you please. And all of us are waiting for that first person to step forward. So the question is, who will be the first person? Who will be the first domino? I always call it the first domino. And then when that topples, all the other dominoes topple after it. So we have an award that we give at our Conversation with God Foundation. Every year we give what we call the First Domino Award to someone who says, you know what, I'll go first. But you don't have to be a hero to do this. I want to make that clear. You don't have to write a book or give talks or start giving sermons or do what you think you need to do to somehow change the world. It's just about deciding to self-select, to say, you know, I choose myself to be one who embraces brand new behaviors that announce and declare, express and fulfill, become and experience who I really am, and by my example will those around me, first my spouse, my family, my children, my friends, my neighbors, those at work, and then the larger community. The ripple in the water effect does not stop, and soon we start walking through life as an exemplar, and others say, wow, I like what I see across the street. I like what I see in that person. I want to be more like that. That's what every great spiritual leader has ever done.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your message, for being the person who has had that conversation with God. And I invite everybody to check out the new book, Conversation with God, Book 4, Awaken the Species. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Neale.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be here, and I appreciate the invitation very much.
Yes, and so you can go check out the website, cwgconnects.com. I'm Kris Steinnes. I'm so glad you've shared this hour with you. Want to, again, put a shout-out for Woman of Wisdom for Give Big Day. Just go to givebigseattle.org, and you can search for Woman of Wisdom and help us raise those funds that we're needing for our continuation of, after 25 years, we want 25 more years. And also the Woman of Wisdom book that I put together is a compilation of all the stories, art, poetry, and amazing, inspiring words of wisdom from many of the people who've been to Women of Wisdom is out in Kindle book now. And so you can check that out. And it's a compilation of an exploration of the divine feminine. So I hope everybody has a fabulous weekend, and we'll be back next Friday, 1 o'clock Pacific time.
You've been listening to Voices of Women with Kris Steinnes. Tune in each Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Voices of Women Today, radio with Kris Steinnes.